morning's another one of our studies in discipleship. You know, we're going through a series on what it is to be a disciple of Jesus. And we've done high risk, high reward. We've done prayer, solitude. Last week was about seeking God instead of the cares of the world, money and all that sort of thing. And today is, what does it mean to belong to a church of believers? Why do we bother with church? I want to look very, very broadly at Acts 2. I know most of us have read this passage before. And some of the characteristics of what the New Testament church looks like and what that might mean for us today. And I know the New Testament is full of stuff about churches. There's a lot of guidelines in there, a lot of great information. A lot of very, very smart people have written a lot of big books about churches. So I can't possibly cover this morning. I just want to handpick a couple of things that are really, really important for us. And so this is just a very, very brief snapshot of what it is to be part of a Christian community. I read the story a while ago about a pastor turn up to the new church. He a relatively small town. He turns up and he decided to go and visit all the people in his church before the first service. He wanted to get off on the right foot. So he goes and visits all these people at home. It's really great to see you. Really want to know you. Please come along to our first service. It's going to be awesome. And what happened was about 4 people turned up. And so he was a bit down from this. And he's like, well, what do we do now? The only fitting thing that he's decided was, well, you know what? If the church is dead, let's just cremate and bury it. So he put an ad in the newspaper saying that the church, as we know it, is dead. We're gonna have a memorial service next weekend, and she's all over and done with. And the next weekend, surprisingly, they had quite a significant crowd. A lot of people turn up, and they're a little bit curious as to what's going to go on here this morning. They walk in the church. There's a nice coffin at the front, nice flowers and everything else. Nice little photo of the church, and the pastor gets up and does his thing and prays and gives the eulogy about all the things that the church has done over the years. And then he comes down the front, he opens the coffin, and he invites everyone to come past and have a moment of reflection. And by this time, people are really, oh man, what's going to be in there? So they slowly make their way up to the front, and they slowly walk over here and peer in. And the only thing in that coffin is a perfectly angled mirror. When they looked in the coffin to see what was dead, they saw themselves. And it's a bit of a harsh story, isn't it? But the reality is, I just want to tell it to make one point. Who we are inside is the church we get. If we turn up once every 6 or 8 weeks, if we turn up and just don't really care because church is just a Sunday thing, it's just what we do. If we're not really engaged, we don't really have any connection with the place, that is the sort of connection that people walking in the door are going to see. Why would I want to be part of this church? But if we are the sort of people that love and serve our community, that Jesus has changed inside, that's going to rub off. People are going to see it, okay? I hope that will motivate us to go the extra mile when it comes to doing church. It isn't just one of those things we do on a Sunday. It's far more than that. I don't think you can infer from the New Testament that just church is a Sunday thing. It's an all-of-life thing. It's a lifestyle. Let's read Acts 2, verse 42 to 47. It'll be on your screen, but I'll read it from here. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the sharing of meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshipped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. Oh, to be a church. We've been praying about this out of curiosity. To be a church where people would turn up and God would turn up and change their life. That's what I dream of for this church. And you might say, you know what, this is all good, Steve, but why do we bother? Surely we've heard all this before. Surely we've read Acts 2 before. Surely we've talked about church and why we do all this sort of stuff. And it's a good question. But you know what? I'll guarantee there are people here this morning who really struggle with the idea of what it is to be part of a church. They turn up, they struggle with the person-to-person interaction. Maybe they leave early or whatever else, and if that's you, that's okay. There's some other people who just don't see the value in what church adds to their life, so they just don't do it, okay? Unfortunately, our culture today has become very, very obsessed with what we can get, the individual, self. Some Christians think, for example, that you can do Christianity in isolation. If we go to Kurong, we can buy any number of books about great stuff. We can get online, listen to podcasts or whatever else. We can get all this stuff and give church a miss because that demands something of me. I've got to give something of myself to that. And I think the last 50 years or so, I'd suggest, our nation, I think, there's been a growing suspicion about organisations. We see this in the government, we see this in the church particularly, and even in the last week, we've got a Royal Commission into child abuse, and we've got public examples of people from organisations like churches getting themselves locked up. All that breeds a systemic distrust of being part of anything bigger than myself. And I think church has obviously gone, in my opinion, sometimes gone a bit too far when it comes to trying to provide religious services and all this sort of stuff, and almost sell themselves to consumers. In fact, there's a really, really funny YouTube clip. If you go home and just type in church and consumerism or something like that, you can watch this little 5-minute video about people who get in a car, they drive up to the old McDonald's drive-through, and the message says, "Good morning, welcome to church. What service can we provide for you today?" And sometimes it's, they get splashed with holy water or something like that. It's actually quite amusing. But it wouldn't be so funny if it wasn't true. It's that has crept into some parts of the church. And living in a world as consumers, we get this idea that the church exists to serve me. And if you read the New Testament, there's no way you can infer that. The church is what we are together, and it isn't what you can give. It isn't what you can get, it's what you can give. That is what a church is. Now, I want to acknowledge this morning that we have people on the opposite side of the spectrum as well. We have people in this church this morning who have contributed to faithfully loving and serving Jesus for a long time. We have people who have been in pastoral ministry, people who have been in different areas of the church, have committed themselves to an organisation, and over the years have been burnt out or have been blamed for different failures or whatever else. And this leads us to a distrust of the church. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to keep going to church if the church has been part of taking away something of yourself. And I want to say on behalf of this church, If that is you this morning, I want you to be welcome here. We as a church want to be part of that journey. I know it takes courage, I know it takes effort, but we would love to be part of the restoration process for you. We really would. And it's worth the effort because church is bigger than any one of us. The first thing I want to talk about is a commitment to something bigger than ourselves. If you watch AFL footy, I don't know if any of you watch AFL footy, but maybe I'm just a ring-in and I do, but basically what happens after the game, the commentators run onto the field and they grab some bloke who's just finished running 20 kilometres. He's having trouble breathing, and they ask him, mate, how was your game? How was your, what happened? You won the game. And his comment is something like this. It's some sort of variation of this. Oh, it was a 4-quarter effort today by the boys. The boys really played for each other. We all backed each other and did our thing. And midfield did a great job in helping out the forwards. It's great to get a win, great to get the 4 points, something along those lines. But in a game, you've got 22 people wearing a jersey and got the shoes on. You've probably got 50 or 100,000 people watching them. I've got news for you. The only people who are part of that game are the blokes on the field. The game can happen without any spectators. It will still function, okay? So a commitment to something bigger than ourselves should move us from being a spectator to pulling on our shoes and socks to pulling on a jersey and getting on the field. And I think, when Paul talks in the New Testament in Romans 12 about the church being a body, he's making the point that our contribution is bigger than ourselves. It's bigger than just one person. Without one person's contribution, the church can't function the way it otherwise would. And, someone's contribution is fixing the kitchen door. Another's contribution is me this morning. Another's contribution is Dave doing sound. Another's contribution is the worship team, the music team, the different other things that go on. Sorting clothes at the op shop, all this sort of stuff. A wide spectrum of things. And without each and every one of those things being part of the overall organisation, the church misses out. It doesn't run the way that God anticipates, and we miss things. It's only together when we do these things that it makes the church something special. And we have this dumb idea sometimes that only the people up here in front, who maybe are leading a small group or preaching or leading church or whatever else, they're the ones that we need. Absolute rubbish. Absolute garbage. I would argue, and I don't know if I'm right, I would argue that each and every one of you guys who contribute to the life of the church during the week and are unseen are far more significant than I am. Okay? That's what I think at least. But, for example, my sermon from last week didn't appear on the internet by chance. It took some guys up there who recorded it. It took Jared some work to try to edit out my shirt that was checkered and didn't quite fit. It was actually pretty funny. I don't know if it's actually got fixed. It's pretty ordinary. But look, without all those guys making a contribution, that just doesn't happen. It's what we do together. We have a great hosting team that stand on the door every Sunday morning and welcome people in the door. We have other people who hand out coffee and do all that sort of stuff. All those contributions are valuable. But I'll tell you what, I reckon Gordon Hoffer's the one who comes along on a Friday morning. Gordon comes along, he gets all the bulletins, he folds them in half, he puts the connection cards and the offering things and the pen and everything else. So that contribution makes something to the people walking in the door. Because otherwise for them, it's just a mess. It's like, we'll have to hand out something, And I only pick on Gordon for this reason. A couple of weeks ago, Gordon was crook, and some of the interns and I had to actually do this, and it's hard. It takes a lot of coordination to get, to fold a bit of paper exactly in half, I might add. Gordon's got this down pat. Gordon has a gift, by the way. Gordon, you are amazing. But it's the shared commitment of Gordon and the Welcome team that makes it something special. And if you help with the kids or the hosting or the morning tea or you serve in the op shop, you make coffee, you do play group, you do sound, you sit on the music team, you're on the board, whatever. We probably haven't been as vocal in our thanks as what we should be. And I want to say on behalf of the church, thank you. Each one of you and each one of your contributions matter something to me, and they matter to God. Thank you. Because that's what makes the church great, by the way. And I want to tell you something. Sometimes we miss saying thank you. That's probably on us. But each one of you guys are valuable. And by the way, if you're new to the church or you can contribute more, what really matters is a willingness to jump in and help. Okay? If anyone has spare time, if you've got an hour spare on a Friday morning or an hour spare on a Tuesday night, and you want to contribute something to the church, we can find a way to use you. Okay? It's the commitment to do something together that makes something special, part of something bigger than yourself. Secondly, I think it's a commitment to grow together. We've got to understand that in our journey to discipleship and to being followers of Jesus, that we've got to be part of a journey together where all of us grow, all of us develop, all of us are on a process of knowing more, learning more, applying it more. In Acts 2, these people are together. They have everything in common. But there still would have been a very, very wide diversity of people. As God adds to the church, you would have had different races, different cultures, different, probably even different languages. That would have been interesting. Different languages, different everything. You've got people there of different ages. You've got grandparents, you've got kids, you've got all that sort of stuff happening. We had that in this church. Men, women, grandparents, kids, even teenagers who are missing today. But all those people, I think we should celebrate the diversity of the way that our church is and the way that the church is supposed to be. In all these different people, it is fantastic that we can have all these people in one place, Jesus Church, because it's bigger than us. It's about Him. And the life and the experiences that we've had in our life and in our journey of faith together are meant to serve as an encouragement and a blessing and a challenge to other people who are on the same journey as us. And I hate to spoil the news for the younger generation, who probably aren't here, by the way, but there's a difference between being a Facebook friend and being a real friend. I know, who would have thought? But one of the challenges that I think a lot of churches have, would be changing a superficial relationship where you talk about the weather. Oh, how was your week? Good. Yeah, that's great. Changing the superficial culture that we have into something deeper. By the way, like Mike said this morning, we've got our small group sign up starting in 2 weeks' time. And I want to encourage you, if you're thinking about stretching yourself and you want some more information on that, you want to get in a small group, they're a great way of getting to know people and understanding where life meets this thing. Because it's one thing to read it and go, that's nice, it doesn't really apply to me. What is really valuable about a small group is coming together, reading that, and actually applying it into everyone's life. That's when this thing actually makes sense. And you can't do that yourself because you get a very, very, maybe a non-clear message about the whole thing. It's a great way of wrestling with the Bible and wrestling with people's different situations and seeing where the Christian life fits. Okay? I know that Nathan's spoken before also about not just small groups, but other, other general interest groups, where you can invite your mates along, have a coffee, have a beer, whatever. May not beer. The bigger picture is that you are intentionally investing into people's lives who you can make a contribution to, who you can invite to Alpha, who you can make connections with. We can do that sort of stuff together. By the way, Martin Ottinger is not here, I don't think. Oh, Marty is here. How was your ride yesterday, Marty? Yeah? Good. Marty and a couple of his mates and a couple of other ring-ins go for a bike ride once every couple of Saturday mornings. And from my conversations with these guys, I would use the term bike ride pretty loosely. Is that accurate? Yeah. I'm actually going to join in one of these ones because from what I've been told, as long as you can be upright and move, you can be part of the group. But a great way to get to know people and understand how faith and life and everything else interact, how different people's perspectives and different ideas can coexist and stuff. And I want to encourage you that if you're interested in that, go see Marty after the service. I will come and join you, Marty, I promise. Maybe I have to get some air in the tyres first or do some practice runs or something like that first. But the third thing is a commitment to welcoming other people as well. And this is, I suppose, probably very, very similar in the same vein as the previous one. A church can be about programs, and it can be about music, and it can be about attractions, as it unfortunately sort of has been sometimes. But it can be about all these things, but what it's really about is the people. It's really about the people in the church. And I found this out the hard way not a couple of years ago, but just in the last couple of months. We have some friends of ours from Billawheeler. I'll just call them by name, James and Amy. James and Amy had been brought up in Christian homes. They'd gone away to cut a very, very long story short, they'd gone away to uni, lost their faith, come home and just sort of, got work, got married, had a couple of kids, got busy in life and everything else. And over a period of time, God worked on them and they realised, you know what? We have to go and make this faith thing a priority. We've got to go back to church. So they turn up at our church one day, and over a period of time, we get to know them a little bit better. James joins into a men's group and all that sort of thing. And there was this really, really strange phone call one night. We Amanda and I, in a small town with not many people around, it's very unusual to not have anyone at your place on a Saturday night. And we didn't have anyone at our place one night, so I called James. And it was a very, very strange phone call. Mate, do you want to come over for a barbie? You want to come over for a barbecue? And I don't think he'd ever had an offer like this, because his response was, you want us to come to your place? Yeah, mate, that's right. Well, what do we bring? Nothing. Just bring yourself. Can the kids come too? Yeah, they can. What are we going to do? I don't know. Have a feed, have a beer, have a chat, something like, watch some TV. I don't know, we'll do something. And he's like, oh. And there's this very, very, very important pause while he goes and asks his wife, which is a very, very important thing, by the way. But he comes back and he said, all right, well, we'll come over for dinner. And but there was just another pause, and he said, can I just tell you, I'm super excited about this, because no one's ever invited us to their house before. This guy had been to work colleagues, places for different social events. They've gone to the family's birthdays before. They've gone to the pub for a meal with some friends. They've gone to, Christmas with the family and all this sort of stuff. Nobody had ever made we just want you to come to our place and be part of our life. And over the next couple of months, we were actually pretty impressed to see that some other people in the church did the same thing. almost without any planning. And we found out that as we left a couple of months ago, when we were talking with these guys, that for them, it was the people that they met and the relationships that they built amongst each other that made the difference. Of all the things the church did, of all the courses the church ran, of all the other stuff that the church provided, it was the people who took an effort in their life that made the difference. And for the early New Testament church, it meant welcoming a bunch of new people into the church. It meant, as the Holy Spirit moves, all these new people start showing up. What a great problem to have, by the way. The personal connections that you make in a church is what makes or breaks a church. And the reality is that in our church we have new people turning up a lot of weeks. And this is something that I think we could probably do a bit better. And some people of those guys are going to be people who are visiting from another church and almost sort of, I suppose, seeking a place to go. Some people are going to be they've never been part of a church before ever, but we're the closest one and we're the first day. Every scenario is going to be a little bit different, so we're going to start in the near future running a visitors lounge after the service. So basically what that's going to mean is a couple of lounge chairs over here in the corner. It's not an idea that we segregate them away and keep them safe from everyone else. That's not what we're trying to do, okay? We are trying to be a little bit more intentional about how we make connections, grow some relationships. And this is not a job for me. It's not a job for some of us. It's a job for all of us. If you're sitting next to someone this morning and you haven't seen them before, two things may have happened. One, you haven't been here enough and they've been coming here for months. Or B, they could be here for the first time. It's very, very easy just to talk to them, get to know them a little bit. Invite them over for a coffee after the service. Sit down with them. Introduce them to some other people, okay? It doesn't have to be thought of as being one of these jobs to do. It can just be one of those things that we do because Jesus has changed us. And, Jesus welcomed us as strangers into his kingdom. When we weren't worthy or deserving of everything, Jesus went the extra mile for us. The least we can do is have a lounge chair to show some new people some extra effort and time. I'd love hospitality and this sort of stuff to just be part of our culture. And I tell you what, when we first turned up in this church, the first weekend we walked in the door, I think Mike was looking out for the bloke with the cowboy boots on and the fellow from the country who talked a bit different. But that was what we were looking for. When we turn up at a new church, what we really wanted to know is the people here are normal, they actually talk to me, and they care. And you can tell a lot by the first little bit you get. We got a really good vibe from here. Okay, this is a great church. It really is. But let's go the extra mile, and let's make sure that people who walk in the door, we aren't going to have a clue what their background is or where they've come from. But it doesn't take much effort to sort of try to go a little bit deeper and just make that personal connection with people, because that is what does the extra mile in a church. I know that some people who for a variety of reasons have some dietary issues, or the house is a mess, or whatever. I know there's about 1,000 reasons why you can't invite people to your house, but be creative with it. It can just be some mums getting together for morning tea at the park and taking the kids for a run this week in the school holidays. It can just be, let's go to the RSL and have dinner. It can just be, let's go to Macca's and have a coffee. It can, you don't have to do it at your place. Be creative with it, have a bit of fun. But let's make hospitality part of our culture. It's just part of who we are. Welcoming others means welcoming them not just into the church, but into your life. That's really where the rubber hits the road. And lastly, a commitment to the wider community. In Acts, the way that these people turned up and the church loved each other and served each other was meant to be almost like a secondary invitation to people. People see the way that we love each other and they take notice. It changes them. It invites them in. And it's a great invitation. It really is. One of the great things that happened in Billow a couple of years ago was a cyclone. Not particularly a great thing, but what happened out of that was really significant for us. I was working that night, very, very long night, and but across the church, a lot of people were affected. We had people climb out of bed at about 7 a.m, put their feet out onto the floor, and realise they're standing in 6 inches of water inside their house. We had other people who at about 2 a.m. had to call other people in the church and say, bring the boat and swim for their lives. That's how significant it got in some places. But almost without any coordination, what happened was that all the home groups sort of got together. They went and hit someone's place. They fed them. They looked after them. They cleaned everything out. They took loads to the tip and everything else. They did all this work, and within a day or so, it was done. It was all sorted. It wasn't everything, but it was a good start, and it was an invitation to say we care about you, we love you, we want you to be part of this. And country culture is pretty awesome with this sort of stuff, but there were some other people who really struggled. I was talking to a guy. Shortly after that, this guy owns his own business. He spends a lot of time, employing people and everything else. And he noticed he had to pay people to come to his house and clean it up, or recruit some other people with a couple of cartons of beer or whatever to come and help him out. It didn't come naturally for a lot of people, but for church it does. And his comment to us, as a dead-set atheist, was this: I can't stand the idea of a God, but I'm so impressed by the way that you love each other. And I think the way that we do that, the way that we serve each other, sends a very, very clear message to other people around us. It tells them, unofficially, that our God is worth something to us. It's worth the extra effort. It's almost like an unofficial type of mission, isn't it? It's pretty interesting. But it sends a unified message, and for Christians, it shouldn't take a natural disaster for it to happen. It should just be who we are. It should just be because Jesus has changed us in such a manner that we would go the extra mile, particularly for each other. Being a disciple, being someone who is wanting to be a follower of Jesus, loving and serving each other is because of what Jesus has done in us. And of all the common bonds that we share, the common bond is Jesus. Nathan was talking to me the other day and was saying that we together, with the Holy Spirit inside of us, have a supernatural bond that pulls us together, that makes us close, that makes us something when we can't give any more. We have got a bond there. And I just want to say two things in closing. Number one is this: Jesus loves the church, and so should we. Jesus talks about building his church. I wrote an assignment years ago about the idea of Jesus church, Jesus yes, church no. Trying to refute that. So that probably isn't the focus of today's message, but the New Testament talks about how all these different people come together and serve and unite under Christ. And I know there's some drawbacks to community. I understand that there's when all these different people come together, there's some agendas that need to be straightened out. There's some other things that need to be resolved, and that's okay. But the important thing and the important plan from the start for Jesus was for us to have a way that we can join together encourage each other, and spur each other on and love each other well at the same time. It's on us as Jesus' church to find a church where we can do that. It's on us. And I simply want to say this. Would you come and join in? If you're visiting here this morning and you're not from around here, I want to encourage you to go home and get hooked in. If you're here this morning and looking for a church, I'll consider this church as a place where you can hook in and serve and contribute to something bigger than yourself. If you're already part of this church and you're already involved, thank you. But would you consider and commit yourself afresh to being part of what Jesus is doing here? And secondly, you can be in the church and not in Christ. The church is meant to be a lifeboat to a lot of people who need to jump in and saving from different things. Some of us have grown up in churches our whole life. We've been part of a church and we've gone along and listened to these sermons every week, and it's never really changed us. It's possible to turn up to church and do all the churchy things. Communion. In some churches you can get baptised as a kid. Other ones, you can do the whole confirmation process. For some it can be other things. You get married in a church. You can even die in a church and have your funeral in a church. But if you don't know Jesus, turning up into a church means nothing for you. This is where the change happens. So when it comes to saving you, the church doesn't do that. Jesus does that. And I would plead with you, as we always do, when it comes to being a disciple and trusting Jesus, would you trust Jesus today for your salvation? Don't put your faith in a church. Put your faith in Jesus. The church does a great job of discipling and encouraging others to be part of that journey. But the first decision to be made is yours. Trust Jesus for your salvation. And if that's you this morning, I'd love to have a yak with you after the service. There'll be some other people up here praying after the service. So please come and talk to one of us if you're there. Guys, the reality is, like Kerry was saying before, we've got a lot of time to practice to get this right. We've got a whole eternity to spend worshipping in the presence of our God. Let's make our church a really good representation of what it's going to be for all of eternity, Can the worship team come up and join me? And I might just close in prayer. God, we want to thank you for this body of believers, for your people. God, it was your idea before the foundation of the world to have all of these people come together. Your idea for people to join together under Christ and to encourage and love and challenge each other as we see the day of your return approaching. God, we want to pray that you might help us to spur each other on, to encourage each other to go deeper than just a superficial relationship. We want to pray that you might equip and serve, help us to serve, help us to love, help us to understand what that means. And Lord, would this be a church where we would be so transformed by what Jesus has done for us that we would go to the end of the world to offer that salvation to other people. God, we thank you that you are a great God, that you expect a lot of your church. And Lord, would you start the work, we pray, in us this morning. Bind us together with cords that cannot be broken. Give us unity, God. Give us valuable relationships and time together. Lord, grow us into people who can change the world, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.